Hey, hey, hey. Are we here?
No, all right, can you hear me? No?
Yeah.
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 Okay, cool.
You okay?
I was muted from the theme. My computer's a little slow here.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, all good.
Indiana hasn't quite made it to first world status.
It's yeah, we still need Elon to save us with Starlink down here.
Mm,
We need to be
man,
liberated from Xfinity.
what a catch.
Uh-huh.
You want to start off? You want to start talking about that? Want to
Sure,
lay out
yeah.
the agenda? Let's
We can.
let's
I
talk
was
about the great
thinking,
man.
yeah,
Great
okay,
man.
yeah. Great man. He builds phallic symbols that inspire us men to use our own phallic symbols. And it's yeah. So, great man of history, Elon Musk launched rocket into space, and this was part of his project. A key component of colonizing space would be to be able to reuse rockets, and he built a giant tower that was going to retrieve his rocket booster after going into orbit. And with this last-minute approval, he got the test right before election season. And what do you know? They caught the rocket. So I'm going to show a quick clip right here of Elon Musk's giant manly tower catching his giant manly rocket. And we'll see how it makes you feel.
Man, that tower looks tight.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it's a crock of shit.
Uh-huh.
I think Elon Musk is mostly a crock of shit. His career, his public persona, his so-called accomplishments,
Mm-hmm.
SpaceX, maybe in particular, crock of shit. Meaning not that this is all fake. I think he really is sending rockets into space and then catching them. I really do think it all looks super cool.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think the engineers, not that I know anything about, my father was an engineer, so I know a teeny bit about this. And he certainly, I'm pretty sure my father would have said that the engineering among the engineers at SpaceX is impressive for sure. But Musk himself, I don't know what he's done actually in terms of actually making the rockets or designing the rockets or planning any of it. Maybe he has. I sort of doubt it, given his other decisions and given the fact that Elon Musk's companies, and we've talked about this, right? And I think in some ways you know more about this than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them, the major companies, the famous companies, including Twitter, by the way, have all received massive either government subsidies, contracts, grants, tax breaks to the tune of millions and millions and millions, meaning it constitutes, I believe, a major portion of the revenues of his four largest companies. Something like that. I mean, a massive, doesn't even matter the revenue. I was given a tour of some of the Tesla plants in Texas a few years when we did the event in Texas. Just around it. And apparently it was all just given to Tesla by the government, either state or federal or both. That was just one example. Twitter's been receiving subsidies and tax breaks of various kinds from federal and state governments and San Francisco government since the beginning of Twitter. And of course, they work, as we know, closely with federal government agencies. I mean, I don't know exactly. Do we even know, by the way, whether Musk really did stop taking calls from the FBI? We haven't discussed this, right? We don't. That was the big reason he had to take over Twitter, was that we found out that the FBI was directing Twitter as to who to censor. Biggest scandal in domestic politics to me and to a lot of people in many years. But have we actually heard that he has stopped that practice and told FBI they have no hearing in Twitter? I doubt it. I'm sure he still takes their calls, given especially how he has behaved recently politically, being Mr. Law and Order and being an all-American patriot and loving the troops and loving law enforcement and being very, very pro-Trump. Now, the FBI, of course, is not pro-Trump, but I would imagine the deference to law enforcement that Trump, so famous for, Musk would be aping that. As a good American, also as an immigrant, he needs to do that. Anyway, and then SpaceX. Let's talk about this beautiful. What is it? What caught the rocket? The tower.
Yeah, the tower.
Yeah, the tower tightly embracing that rocket. So SpaceX, of course, is an answer. Silicon Valley, the disruptive answer to NASA, to the U.S. government space program, which began in earnest in the 50s, started getting to the moon in the 60s, which to this day will find its way onto the cover of most American history textbooks. You'll see a picture of the man on the moon on the cover of most American history textbooks. Now, what does the picture on the cover of the American history textbook tell us? The selection of it? It tells us that this is one of a handful of the most important events in American history. The man on the moon. If you know anything about science, and again, my father was a scientist and used to inveigh about this repeatedly to me, which was nice. I got some education from the old guy. The number of sort of important or usable scientific breakthroughs or discoveries or inventions from the entire space program, the entire history, is almost non-existent. There's Tang, the breakfast drink, and there's a couple of other little things like space blankets, which are super cool and really useful. Like literally saved my life once in the mountains. Great. And I'm pretty sure that was part of the space program. The Russians figured out how to send dogs into space. That might be useful one day. No, I mean, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've heard, not just from my father, but multiple scientists and very learned people in this, that the whole thing, and then the space shuttle, that was the biggest boondoggle of all. As far as I know, there was nothing discovered of scientific importance. The entire space shuttle program killed how many of them? How many pilots? How many astronauts on that one that blew up in 1987? Velcro. Thank you, Rick. Yeah, Velcro. True. There is actually some very cool consumer items, oddly, that were discovered through the space program, but I think we could have discovered them, outside this going to the moon. Could have figured out ways to discover Velcro without sending men all the way to the moon. So anyway, it's why did we have not just a space program, but a massive space program that was so big we put men on the moon and many, many, many people into space, and usually brought them back, although not always. God, the death rate among astronauts is one of the highest among all the professions. I think it is the highest still. So death, massive fortune. I don't know the number. Does anyone know the number of dollars that have been spent on the United States space program? It's immense, clearly, always tied directly to the military, to the Department of Defense. Oh, is that an accident? No, it's just logistical. It's because the military does things that are relevant to space travel? No. It's because, and again, if you know anything about the history of this, and this is not even controversial, back to our good friend John F. Kennedy. Once again, this is yet another reason John F. Kennedy is not the guy you think he was. It's not the guy Oliver Stone thinks he was. Even our friend Max Blumenthal, I was very sad to see, I think wrote a piece or gave a talk about John F. Kennedy's so-called peace speech, making him out to be an actual peacenik. Completely wrong. But anyway, John F. Kennedy, speaking of not being a peacenik, The space program, I mean, the escalation of it to the lunar space program, that was Kennedy. That was his initiative. He poured massive amounts of money into the space program and was extremely ambitious about it. And he said, and all of his advisors said, and his cabinet said, and journalists who supported his administration said, this is primarily to defeat the Russians. The Soviet Union had already launched a man into space, Yuri Gagarin, in the 50s, beat the United States. Oh no. And you can't have that if you're trying to win the allegiance of third world people who are living in mud huts, who would like maybe some economic assistance from one of the big superpowers, and they're going to be allied with whichever gives them more money. So they both needed to look wealthy, the Soviet Union and the United States at this time, and powerful and technologically advanced, and all the things that third world people would be attracted to. That's where the Cold War was taking place, was in the third world, trying to win allies, each side in that fight. And so Kennedy, and he said this, we must, because he was very conscious about the third world, very concerned about the third world, and wanted to intervene massively in the third world, which he did, especially in Vietnam, most famously. Did not try to end that war. He escalated that war. There's an entire book written about this just recently, but people continue to think that he was actually the peace guy in 1963. No, he launched the space program, poured billions, ultimately billions of dollars into it, killing how many people? There was the one that blew up on the launch pad, killed 3 of them, 4 of them. The Challenger blew up and coming back, that was 5 or 6 of them. I don't know. Quite a few people. Got no scientific achievements out of it whatsoever. The purpose of it was to defeat the Soviet Union symbolically so that the United States could extend its empire into the third world. Yeah, it's 100% a tool of the empire and of militarism and of conquest. That's what it's always been about. And so here comes Elon Musk, who learned about politics yesterday and found out about history like an hour ago. And I'm sure doesn't even know any of this story that I just told, even though it's actually fairly well known. It's not even that controversial. I mean, if you were alive in the 1960s, you probably, and were aware of the space program, you probably know this. Historians don't debate it. It's non-controversial. It was a part of the Cold War. That's what it was about. So what is Elon up to with his little Silicon Valley high-tech mind, autistic black and white mind? Every logo looks the same. What is the autistic color scheme? Black and white. What is the branding for every company he's had? Black and white. So he doesn't tend to think in nuance, in layers of complexity, and especially in historical context. Autistic people have a really hard time, see Sam Harris, thinking historically, because they're very linear in their thinking, and thinking historically requires a great deal of abstract thinking and contextualization, because autists are so linear and binary in their thinking. It all has to be what is true is what they see in front of them, and they must follow that forward. So he doesn't know about the history of any of this stuff. It's also why he is so happy to join in celebrating the slaughter in Gaza in his full-throated support of not just Israel, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, because I'm sure Elon doesn't know a goddamn thing about the history of Israel and how it resembles quite closely, and there have been books written about this, his home country of South Africa when it was an apartheid country. He doesn't know any of this stuff. And I don't know, he maybe knows the history of the space program and the Cold War, but he wouldn't place it within the context of the American empire. Now, we also now find out that he has been working in various ways with the intelligence agencies over the years, doing various little projects for them, some stuff I'm sure we don't know about. He's also now clearly, not clearly, he has announced, he's made it known that he is fully behind Trump. some people speculating that he wants a place in Trump's cabinet.
The Department of Government Efficiency.
Is that actually been stated?
Yeah. That's what he was on his Twitter space. He like pitched that to Trump, and then Trump has been like, yeah.
No, I meant, but Trump hasn't.
He hasn't completely confirmed it, but he has said that Elon will be in some capacity on the team.
There you go.
Yeah, Trump.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Right.
What Scott Adams refers to as the pirate ship. You've got RFK Jr. handling health issues, and you've got Elon Musk handling efficiency issues and firing people. So he's part of the team.
Yeah. So Elon Musk. This is getting even scarier now. So Elon Musk, who we now know think that college campuses are run amok with terrorists and their sympathizers, people who are supporters of terrorists. We know that. We know that he believes that drag queens should be imprisoned for being drag queens, not even for, I think, not just for reading books to children, but for being drag queens. I think, in public, I'm pretty sure he's for that. He's clearly a homophobe. But much more importantly, he's about to become a member of the United States government. And he has a whole history of building his empire and his fortune on top of the United States government, with the help of the United States government. This guy is wholly beholden to the United States government for his livelihood, for everything he is and has. And now he controls the preeminent communications vehicle in the world. He is moving in on the transportation market, going for a monopoly. He's not there yet, but he's certainly going for it. And he's made quite a pace there. He wants to take over the underground transportation system in all the cities too, through his boring company. He's all for the American empire, extending it, strengthening it, maintaining it. He's all for the American military being as big as powerful as possible. He's going to be a member of the United States government. Did I mention this, everybody? And given what we know about the history of the space program and how proud he is of taking over the space program, not disrupting it, not replacing it, it's just a fancier version of the same thing, which do we not think will serve the same purpose? Do we not think SpaceX will be working with the Pentagon quite closely? And how about the CIA? How about all the amazing surveillance tools SpaceX will discover from outer space, looking down on us with all their cameras? Do we not think that Elon Musk is going to use this immense power we have bestowed upon him through our government against us? You're fucking idiots if you don't think so. And about half of my friends, on Twitter at least, and in real life, love him. I was going to use some other language. And these are people who call themselves to be small government, classical liberals, libertarians. Many of them, they call themselves anarchists. Going on about how awesome Elon Musk is all the time for the wonderful things he's done in Twitter, which is to rule it like his personal kingdom, so that the speech code is just a different speech code. People have been getting canceled and thrown off Twitter constantly under his rule. But in this case, it's not up to a committee at Twitter. It's up to Elon himself, who he likes, who he doesn't like, gets to speak on the biggest platform in the world. He's not a free speech guy. He's never has been. Please stop saying that. In fact, start talking about him like he is. He's an enemy of free speech, clearly. And he's on the verge of, SpaceX, forgot this part. This is exciting and terrifying at the same time, as are most of his programs. his companies. Most of what comes out of Silicon Valley is both exciting and terrifying. SpaceX, its major applications apparently, or maybe most important economically applications, will be cargo shipping. Apparently, these rockets will be able to carry like cargo ship loads worth of loads in space. I mean, it's incredible that we're going to be shipping goods like that instead of on ships across the oceans, on rockets through the sky. But that's what I've heard this from like top people in Silicon Valley. I mean, not personally, like on podcasts, but that's what they say. Okay, well, that's super amazing that we'll be able to get like our cars from Japan in a couple hours, I guess, instead of having to wait 3 weeks or whatever it is to go across the Pacific. But think about what the military might do with those capabilities. The ability to ship vast cargo across the planet in instants. You think Elon Musk is not going to use his immense power that we bestowed upon him through our government against us? You don't think that's going to happen, everybody? Look out. Here it comes. The culmination of corporatist America, where we are ruled in every aspect of our lives by a partnership, a conglomerate of oligarchs and the United States government working hand in glove as one. There becomes virtually no distinction between the two. I mean, he's already been providing assistance to various militaries around the world who are allies of the United States, including Israel and Ukraine. I mean, he's already involved in killing people, in other words, for the empire. So this is not something to be excited about unless you get so turned on by phallic symbols flying through the air that you just have to jerk off. Let's please think about the very, very, very dark implications of this, actually. I love the idea of flying in space and looking from above. The views of Earth are gorgeous. I love those pictures. Sure, I have the greatest curiosity in the world of anybody I've ever known. I would love to know what's out there. Sure, that's never what it's been about, because it's always been run by the US empire and now its partner, Elon Musk, our new ruler. So SpaceX, thanks, but no thanks.
The future of Elon can go one of two ways, depending on the election. If Harris wins, all of his contracts are probably canceled, and he probably goes to jail, like they threw Steve Bannon in jail.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I think
I don't
they're
think
really after him. They've been going after him for his hiring practices. They've been every regulatory board has been going after him out of spite. They don't like that his stuff actually works. For example, the Boeing situation, like they have to rely on him to like rescue people from the space station after Boeing screwed up. Like,
so,
and
I'm gonna
like, I think Harris has openly talked about Musk being a problem. Harris has openly talked about Musk being a problem and spreading misinformation and disinformation. What he did to Twitter really put them in their targets. Like, I don't think Trump can even run a campaign at all, and narratives can't get out if Twitter isn't open the way it is now.
Okay, well, since I've become a liberal Democrat since the debate, I haven't registered yet, but I'm going to, and I'm going to vote very enthusiastically for Kamala Harris. No, I have actually heard some things out of her mouth, believe it or not, including in this interview on Fox. I couldn't believe it. The first 20 minutes of that interview on Fox today.
The Brett Baer interview that just came out?
I was on her side the entire time. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I was thinking this. But did you listen to that?
Yes,
Well,
I thought that was really sad and embarrassing, and
oh shit.
yeah, I thought she's just deflecting and going to a very dark place.
Well, I mean, of course, racists don't like what she said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no wonder you think it was embarrassing. But I mean, like white supremacists, of course, dude.
Mhm.
But wait, no, no, we disagree on the border, right? On immigration. That's
Yeah,
that's what they were talking about. They were talking
yeah.
about the border entirely. That's all it was about.
Mhm.
First of all, Brett, what's his face, Baer, just really was extremely rude to her and kept talking over her. And
Yeah.
even though she is the devil, it is possible to see that she can be mistreated. And she certainly was. I mean, it was totally ridiculous, actually.
Mhm.
But also, I agreed with her on substance. I mean, I'm an open borders guy. So, in fact, I don't agree with her. I'm closer to her.
Here's the thing, though. If you're an open borders guy, say you're an open borders guy. She didn't say she's open borders. She said, we tried to close the border and Republicans stopped us.
Oh, no, I know. Oh,
Yeah.
no, I said I'm closer to her position than I am to Brett Baer's, to Fox News.
Yeah.
The Republicans, both MAGA and mainstream Republicans, to me, are vile and horrendous on this issue. I'm an open borders guy. I don't mess around. Like, I'm for no border whatsoever. I mean, I'm not playing here, and you can hate that or like it or whatever, but that means I'm just the opposite of what they're doing in the Republican Party. And the Democrats, they invented the border. People don't know this. In 1965, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the most left-wing president of all time, also responsible for all of the worst things in the federal government now, including the Border Patrol. It was invented by him, that liberal Democrat. While he was fighting in Vietnam, he's also militarizing the border. Quite an set of accomplishments by that fella. But since then, not since then, since the 90s, when immigration started to turn a bit and the AFL-CIO, the labor movement, gained more and more members who were immigrants or children of immigrants, it's always been driven by the labor movement, by the AFL-CIO. They've always dictated what immigration policy is for the Democrats, strictly, because it's always a question of labor force, the labor market, right, which is crucial for the labor union. So they were opposed to immigration by and large. The AFL-CIO are the ones who pushed for the border and the border patrol. This comes out of the Democratic Party and the labor movement. People don't want to talk about this. Cesar Chavez, in particular, he was the main labor leader pushing for the border patrol and militarizing the border. And he even had the United Farm Workers organizers, his union, the famous left wing. There's probably a street in Indianapolis named after Cesar Chavez, right? Somewhere in every city.
There's a mural for sure. There's a mural.
Right. Yeah. He in the late 60s, he sent his goons armed with guns and clubs, and they camped out along the border. They were the original Minutemen, is that what they were called? The guys on the border who did that thing. And they would seize migrants crossing the border to come into work in the fields in California and turn them into the cops, or sometimes beat them up, or like take them in cars and then deport them back physically, right? That's what so it comes out of the labor left, amazingly. Border patrols, closing the borders, stopping Mexican migration in particular. Cesar Chavez was the one who basically coined the term wetbacks and used it all the time to describe his own people coming from Mexico. An incredible whitewashing of another left-wing figure. It's amazing. But anyway, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, immigrants and the children of immigrants entered the labor movement, the unions, in large numbers, in particular the SEIU, which is the most important politically union in the AFL-CIO. And so the AFL-CIO had to soften its stance on immigration and basically become sort of a regulated border rather than a closed border position. That's the Democratic Party position. It's like a half open border, half closed border. Because the Republicans have never had any union affiliation whatsoever, except for the Teamsters. They've never had to care about that, so they're just closed border for often stupid reasons. The Bushes were the exception within the Republican Party. They were pretty close to open borders because they understood what business needs, especially in border states like Texas. They need a lot of cheap labor, so they're confused.
Yeah, the line in 2015 from Bernie Sanders was "Open borders is a Koch brothers conspiracy." Nobody actually wants open borders except those rich Republicans.
Bernie Sanders,
Yeah,
the man. He is the man of the labor left. That is who Bernie Sanders is. You could say he's been the leader of the labor left for 50 years, 60 years. Yes, he's been opposed to immigration his entire career. People don't want to talk about this either. But so because immigrants flooded into the Democratic Party and into the labor movement, the Democrats have had to soften and be a little more open borders than they were before. So I am closer to them, but I still know that they're the devil. And I don't trust them. But yeah, on the Republic. So here's the thing about the Republicans, and we've been talking about this thing with all the hysteria about Springfield, Ohio, and the alleged cat eating by Haitians, etc. I've come more and more to the conclusion that Republican, conservative, right wing opposition to immigration, it can only be from racism. It's so nonsensical. I've lived in major cities with the largest immigrant populations in America my entire life. New York, San Francisco Bay Area, and Los Angeles. Like massive immigration population. It's not a thing. Like it's just not, in terms of crime. Sure, every once in a while some illegal immigrant commits a crime, but they are less likely to than native born Americans. It just statistically, of course, because the vast majority come here not to commit murder, but to do what? To get jobs and make money. And we know this from lots and lots of statistics. So do Republicans not eat in restaurants, or do they just eat at Applebee's? Because what immigrants have brought to, of course, not just the cuisine of America, which in itself has been literally revolutionary. If you please look at what Americans were eating in the 1970s compared to now, it's an incredible feat of human ingenuity and perseverance and whatever it is. It's just an amazing thing what we get to eat in America. And it's almost all because of immigrants. And in so many other ways. Now, if you just need to have everybody look the same as they did 50 years ago in your country, then yeah, it's going to suck. I'm sorry. I mean, but that is sort of part of, it's not necessarily racist, but it's sort of a xenophobic, reactionary tilting at windmills. Things change over time. Every country has changed demographically over time. Every one of them, all the way back to ever since there's been migration, of course, territories and countries have changed over time radically, demographically. People come and go for many different reasons. I mean, you can't insist that England always be about tea and crumpets for eternity. And do we not like curry better than tea and crumpets anyway? Yeah, the British found out they love. What did the Brits eat at tea time at 4:00 every single day? I lived there for a year. I'll tell you, curry. That's the most common thing they eat for tea every single day. Ask a Brit. It's hilarious. There's the benefit of colonialism, but it's also the benefit of migration and immigration from anywhere. I just also, the idea that I have the power simply by having been born in a certain place to stop billions of people from living where they want to live. It's just amazing to me because I'm some dumbass American who happened to be born in California. Just complete luck. I get to decide that all these people from Mexico and all these other places can't live here or work here. It's wild to me. I understand that is the law in basically every country on earth. I get it, but still, that doesn't mean I have to subscribe to it or find it sensible. It's not. It's a ridiculous sort of moral construct that no one ever questions. And if I were someone wanting to live in another country like that, and that was the reason I would look at them and say, what on earth gives you right over this piece of land? Because you happen to be born here? The whole thing's ridiculous. But this is why I am considered by many to be an anarchist. Pardon me.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I don't find the conservative arguments against it to be convincing at all. And I find it to be almost all hysterical. it doesn't contribute to the crime rate. In fact, I think it probably decreases, it reduces the crime rate. If you have more immigrants who are just seeking jobs, which they almost all are, of course they're going to be committing, people will be committing less crime in that population. So it's only a cultural xenophobia and or racism that explains to me the right-wing reaction, hatred of immigrants. No?
I just think it's a fundamental question about sovereignty and the scope of government, and whose interest do you want the government to serve? And I think the more you limit the scope of who your government seeks to serve, the smaller your government will be. If your government only seeks to serve the interests of its own citizens and doesn't try to be everything to everyone and grow GDP infinitely forever by serving big business, importing slave labor, then you have a much more smaller, reasonable government that is less imperialistic.
That's so brilliant. I mean, like, I hadn't even thought of that. And I've been trying to preach political devolution, ever since I got wind of the concept, which is just, we just always want smaller governments. That's all. Use whatever the size of the government is in question, you want it to be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you want it eliminated entirely, but you just always want it smaller. And you want every government to have the smallest possible jurisdiction or sovereignty, in terms of land and people.
Mm-hmm.
The fewer people and less land they have power over, the better. No? Right, of course. I mean, the idea that one single government has sovereignty over this goddamn landmass in the middle of North America, like in all of its vastness, is terrifying. 350 million people under one government across this huge, same with China, same with India, same with Russia. But yeah, it's just crazy concept. And it's so dangerous when you start adding big weapons too, like nuclear weapons. So yeah, I love that. Immigration. Now that's an amazing curve. That's a very anarchistic retort to my anarchistic sort of critique of the conservatives. Man, it's anarchist on anarchist up in here.
Yeah.
So the more immigration, yes, you're right. The reason the United States has 350
the United
million
States is going to be sucking up the number one resource in the world, which is people. And we're going to be taking them from all the other countries, and we're going to be using them to build our empire and to displace the interests of native-born citizens. In the interest purely of growing the empire and manufacturing consent for the one-party rule of the Democratic Party.
Whew.
Yeah.
Goodness. Everybody is going to look, act, and sound like Barack Obama and Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Beige American imperialists.
Mm-hmm.
Progressive, pro-LGBTQ, but beige pro-American imperialists. That's what they're after. That's what they want to create. And that's who, I can think of God. Just think about all the immigrant or second generation immigrant Congress people now, who are all wearing the red, white, and blue, or wearing the Israeli flag these days, but they're completely in line with the empire. I mean, they're not in line, they're running it now. There's many of them in Congress, in the White House. I mean, it's getting more and more beige around here. It's getting very beige.
Obama and Harris are the prototypes, and they're exactly that. They are what the empire wants to be, and they're the face that the empire wants to have.
Yep. This is what you should be.
Yeah.
Has that not been the message to every liberal child in the last 20 years? If you're a boy, you should be Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. And if you're a girl, you should be Kamala Harris. This is quite literally what they tell the children.
Yeah. And love him or hate him, but there is nothing more American than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is on board with Mickey Mouse, Elvis Presley, Coca-Cola as one of the most American things out there, representing native-born American sentiment, at least, interests and sensibilities. And yeah, that's the opposition.
Man, you motherfucker. So, all right, let's fill out your argument though, because it's so amazing and so brilliant and such a pain in the ass for me. Okay, The reason the United States has 350 million people in it is immigration. Our natural birth rate, or whatever it's called, I think has been pretty flat for decades. But we know this. I mean, it's largely been from immigration. The vast population increase. The United States, I think, has doubled in size since the 1920s. I think that's about right. Maybe even the 1930s. It's been really fast. Immigration. So making it larger, making the government more powerful, granting it more sovereignty over more human beings, and also extending its tentacles outward, because these immigrants, I think you were alluding to, of course, have connections to other countries, and in many cases, they come from elites in other countries. See, for example, a lot of the West African immigrants to the United States, especially Nigeria. Have you not noticed all the Nigerian names in high places in recent years? Those people don't come from the working class in Lagos. They come from the elites in Nigeria, and they were coming here just to get their kids into Harvard, which they largely did, by the way. It's the most educated ethnic group in the United States is West African immigrants. But anyway, so you don't think that helps in forging alliances with the political elites in Nigeria and in West Africa? For sure. So yeah. Look at all the ambassadors we have all around the world, right? Who are those people largely? Many of them are either immigrants or children of immigrants from the countries to which they are ambassadors. All right, Weimer. So what do we do now? This means that what's the correct anarchist position on immigration? You are opposed to it entirely and always because of this reason, because we want governments to have fewer people under their control, or what? I don't understand.
Largely, number one, stop foreign interventions that create humanitarian crises, that create refugee crises, that bring immigrants over here. We wouldn't have this mass migration from South America if Ronald Reagan didn't do what he did in the 80s.
And Europe.
Yeah.
Right? If we hadn't destroyed the Middle East, especially Syria, the migration crisis in Europe would not have happened.
Yeah. I think largely these people would prefer to be prosperous in their home countries. I think generally people have an instinct to feel kinship to their homeland and want to be buried where their parents are buried and raise kids in the same spot. And
Wow.
And then follow the will of the people as to who they want to let in according to their own sovereignty. And I think you'll find pretty across the board that people want transparent, legal immigration of highly qualified people, but they don't want tens of millions of people crossing the border.
What if our lawns need mowing?
Teenagers. We used to do this thing called Create Kids, and now we just...
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Child labor is better than having a Mexican.
Yes, actually, yeah. Abolish child labor laws and get kids working again. Take them out of the schools and have them pick the fruit.
Yeah, the youth corps in Germany was big in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
It was big. Yeah, the young, they love getting out there and working with the shovels.
They do. Or like navigating tiny little mine shafts. Like they're built for that. It's
mine shafts and Gemeinschaft.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's good to know where you're coming from, Michael.
Yeah.
It is kind of amazing that like there is a fine line, perhaps, between fascism and anarchism, turns out.
Yeah. That's why
because for the last 5 minutes you sounded kind of like a Nazi, but I was like, but wait, these are anarchist arguments, actually.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?
It like Yeah. Do you want to be effective at this destroying the global empire thing, or
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
This show has been entirely too intellectual so far, and we need to look at some politicians talking.
Okay. You talked about that Brett Baer interview.
Yeah.
I've got some clips from that. Okay. I wanted to talk about how, like, I think Kamala Harris knows she's going to lose, and the politics of joy is now gone.
Oh.
Yeah. The politics of joy is gone, where after the assassination attempts, they were like, okay, we need to stop calling Trump Hitler and a threat to our democracy. We need to bring the level down on that. They've now found that Kamala has nothing of substance to offer, and she is now once again just purely attacking Trump and fear mongering as much as possible. And I think that's what this clip is, where she's just dodging the question and talking about how dangerous Trump is.
Frankly, exhausted of Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
but
people
you're the
have
lever
become.
of power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me.
I just realized that my audio once again was not as clear this time as it should be because stupid thing. So I apologize, people. I've got to work. I thought I had fixed it, but it's not working anyway. Am I relatively clear though? I mean, clear enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Apologize to everyone. So yeah, Kamala, she thrown in the towel on running an actual campaign, or she just wants to cut Trump down a few pegs before he ascends to the office once again. I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I mean, they're going to do it. I mean, why is this novel or why is this important? They've always leaned on personal attacks on Trump.
Yeah, totally. I think more notable from the Brett Baer interview is how tough Brett Baer is on Kamala, and how sort of sympathetic to Trump talking points and on message with Trump's agenda he really is with that interview. And Elon is along the lines of this too, but you see a shifting of elites where I think some elites are going to allow Trump to be president again in a way that they did not in 2020.
Like Fox.
Like Fox News, yeah. What was it? Wallace did the debate, Fox News debate, and was totally intervening against Trump the whole time. Fox News was just as propagandistic as the other networks against Trump. And same thing with Elon. Refusing to comment, and now you have a bunch of people on Trump's side. So I think this is a signal where times are going.
Yeah, I mean, just look at it. It's hard to remember now. It seems so long ago, but Trump is far more legitimate now than he was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, or what is it, 9 years ago now. 2015 when he started that campaign was 2015. So 9 years ago is when Trump emerged onto the political scene. And he was, do people forget? Like it was actually a very scary time because of the level of hysteria about Trump. I mean, I was scared of the hysterics. My girlfriend at the time, who was actually a pretty level-headed person, just not political, the night of the election, I had to assure her that she was not going to be raped when she walked down the street the next day. I mean, this is a person with a master's degree. She's a vice president at a college. I mean, this is like a very educated, very smart person And she was not alone. All of her friends, also very similar, college educated, very intelligent people, were all talking about how there were going to be gangs of men raping women on the street and killing Black people. And that was a commonly held belief among liberals, meaning half the country, including, like her, people who were not into politics. So that it got into the minds of people who are not into politics, meaning it got into really like half the population believed, at least on some level of their consciousness, that that was what Trump was. And so compare that to now, right? I mean, sure, there's a little bit of that you hear, but compared to 2015 and 2016 and 17 and 18, those years, the nonstop, I mean, just screaming from every quarter that Trump was a Nazi and a Klansman and a Russian asset and all the rest of it. So even, Russiagate is really muted now. You rarely hear it. You hear it a little bit now, but it's nothing. Remember 3 years of it. We had 3 years of nonstop, every single day, all day long. Trump was working for Russia. They barely mention it now. I guess on MSNBC, they still call him a racist, I suppose, but I don't see those clips as much anymore. So I guess they're not getting as much traction. And I also even think on MSNBC, they're not nearly as hysterical about Trump as they were 9-8 years ago. The wokeness has declined. That's part of it. But I also think that he's just been around, and we went through an entire administration, 4 years of Trump, and then 4 years since then to sort of contemplate it and think about it and review it. And, they'll somehow claim that he's still a threat to democracy. But it's basically impossible, to maintain that kind of fiction in the face of just recent facts, which are in everyone's face. So he's far, far, far more legitimate or legitimated now than he was then. And which means that a significant portion of the ruling elite, the ruling class, whatever you want to call it, the media, the political class, to some extent academia, meaning that academia is no longer screaming at the top of its lungs about Trump. They're still anti-Trump, and it's just not nearly the level of hysteria. And media, and Fox is the main thing that he could have won, which he apparently has won. That was the one legacy outlet that he could have gained favor from, which he hadn't before. And I guess he has. Murdoch, I suppose, has decided to go with Trump. I didn't know this. I haven't been following Fox lately, but
I've tuned into Fox for the first time in a while this last week, and I'm like, whoa! I used to think they were against Trump, and now they're back on his side. I think, currying favor again. But the line from the Harris campaign, I've heard Harris and Waltz use this line in rallies, that this is the new hoax they've dug up. The new thing is Trump will use the military to fight the enemy within. And when he says that, he means you. Trump is going to use the military against you, and he's going to use the Department of Justice to prosecute political opponents. That means we're all going to jail.
Sure.
That's the rhetoric I'm hearing, especially in this last week.
If Tim Walz was speaking to the Democratic National Committee, yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, Trump's going to, I don't even think he's going to lock up Democrats. I mean, maybe,
I don't think so
maybe, but if he locks up anybody, that's who it will be. It'll be someone like Debbie Wasserman Schultz or someone like that, No, I have zero fear of Donald Trump in that way.
Yeah.
So,
Mark Halperin, did you see his interview with Tucker? He said that if Trump wins, it'll be the biggest mental health crisis in our nation's history, that there are still, I don't know, let's say a quarter of the country that sees him as the absolute worst person to be in office, and that you will have divorces, you will have office incidents, you will have birthday parties ruined, you will have lifelong relationships torn apart because people just will not be able to process it again.
Worse than 2016?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Why would it be worse than 2016?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
I mean, well, because people will see, because it's a second term. My God, we couldn't get rid of him, and he got reelected. I mean, that's how bad America is.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard what Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis have already declared they're going to leave the country.
Yeah, I think just getting reelected, there's no hope. Like the first time around, you could see it as a fluke and, it can't be real. But I think if this sets in the second time, you can't be delusional about it. This actually happened. This is going to be the next 4 years of your life. These people are here to stay in politics for a long time. This is where we're at now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care
much
except for foreign policy in terms of the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
And nor should anyone really care much about it except for foreign policy. And they should care immensely about foreign policy and the presidency. But I mean, first of all, the president just simply doesn't have that much power over much of what we argue about, and very little. I mean, there's executive orders, yes. And the Democrats in particular have used the executive order to enact basically legislation by fiat, which is not cool. But still, I mean, Congress still holds the bulk of the power concerning domestic issues. And they're supposed to concerning war. They just ceded that power in the 1970s. But certainly domestic issues, most of what we fight about politically, that comes under the Congress in terms of policy. The president can't really do that much. They're just sort of the figurehead, the symbol. But in foreign policy, of course, they're everything. And that is, of course, the most important thing in all of politics. War and peace, isn't it, everyone? And so I wish, for me, that's all I really want to hear from them. It just doesn't matter. Immigration is not really up to them either. It's mostly up to the Congress. So, I mean, sure, they can alter policies, modify policies, but the basic policy of the United States on immigration is an act of Congress. So it's the act of 1965. The Immigration Act of 1965 is still the basic law, which has been amended many times, but that piece of that law those are the rules for immigration in our country. And that was determined entirely by an act of Congress. So let's talk about foreign policy.
Yeah, the letter that Secretary Blinken and Lloyd Austin sent to Israel, is that substantive? Is this the final ultimatum that we've finally been wanting? That's improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza over the next 30 days, or else we might not send weapons? Is this consequential?
Something finally made them snap. I mean, maybe it was just the anniversary that made Blinken and Austin, finally change their tune on this. They've given a blank check basically to Israel since the beginning. There was that 1 week when they delayed shipments of the 2,000-pound bombs, and that was it. Otherwise, they've just been sending. It's just an open airway. What's it called? An air freeway, whatever it's called. Just shipping weapons, whatever Israel wants, they get. Just billions and billions of dollars worth of weaponry. It's just such the slaughter. Just now we're burning people alive in tents hooked up to an IV. You see that lovely thing?
Yeah, the hospital.
He was hooked up to an IV as he's burning to death in a hospital that they bombed. So that might have been the atrocities might have made them snap, but it's been a year of atrocities. So the whole thing makes me sick. It's hard to even talk about on any level because of the horror. I mean, it's, there are now the Lancet, the very esteemed medical journal. They estimate that the death count is radically low and that it's closer to 200,000 in Gaza. That's the Lancet. The official count is 40-something thousand right now. It's almost certainly got to be at least 50. And there's no letting up. I mean, the massacres have actually increased in pace in the last month. And they've been going after, in particular, the refugee camps, which, you know, I mean, those have been the centers of resistance. So I'm sure there's been fighters in those camps that they were going after to some extent. But they're still, these are cities of tents, and they're dropping bombs on them from airplanes. It's just astonishing. Like, just astonishing. And I still have not seen a single picture or video of a dead Palestinian with a gun or with a Qassam headband or anything that makes them look like a fighter. Anything. I have not seen in a year, I've not seen a single picture or video of a dead Palestinian who really could be a fighter. And that just seems to me, with all the drones they have, Israel has, they fly drones 24/7 over Gaza, taking video and pictures nonstop 24/7 for a year. They've got troops on the ground. When they shoot someone, they can take a picture of him. Don't you think they would take a picture of a guy who had a gun after they shot him and had like an Al-Qassam headband on? Of course they would. And they would spread it on the media all over the world. I think they have killed a tiny number of Hamas militants. A tiny. I wouldn't be surprised. My guess, actually, is fewer than 1,000. Where are they? Where is the evidence that they've killed any significant number of Hamas guys? I've seen 2 videos of Hamas guys getting into shootouts. There's an amazing video of 2 of them on a rooftop getting into a shootout with the IDF and losing and getting killed. That's it in terms of actual clear Hamas fighters being killed. So I've seen evidence of two of the 40,000+ people. Now, I'm sure it's more than that. But we know Israel has told us from the beginning that where are the Hamas fighters? They're underground in tunnels. So why are we supposed to therefore think that they've been killed in large numbers? If, as you've been telling us, they're underground in tunnels and you're not fighting in the tunnels. It's like so obvious, like once again, Israeli Zionist logic. When you just stop for 1 second and think about it, you look at it, it's like, oh, this doesn't even, it's self-contradictory. We've killed, what's their claim? They think it's up to, they say now 15,000 combatants they've killed. 15,000, they say they've killed. 15,000. Where on earth is the evidence of any number like that? Where are those bodies? What are their names? They can't even provide them. Where's the evidence that if you know that they were fighters, show us the evidence. They've not once shown us the evidence that any one of those people is a fighter. It's incredible. 15,000, we're supposed to believe that when you've been telling us that they're all hiding underground, which they are, in tunnels, we know. Those tunnels are 100 feet deep. They're designed, of course, to withstand bomb blasts. Of course. That's why they built them. And that's why the Hamas fighters are largely safe. I'll bet you anything it's under 1,000 at this point. How could they have killed more than 1,000? The guys, we've seen countless videos that Hamas puts out of the fighting. 2 or 3 guys, maybe 4 at most, they jump out of the tunnel, they run into an abandoned building, they shoot an RPG at an Israeli tank, they run back into the tunnel. That's how the fighting goes. Like, of course they're not killing thousands of these guys. So sorry, a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I mean, but it's not a tangent because the horror of this is actually grossly underestimated, and this statistic that keeps getting thrown around by every single pro-Israel Zionist there is, it's just grotesque to me that the civilian to combatant ratio is better than in any other war, and they say it's either 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. So some of them say that they've killed 20,000 combatants out of the 40,000 dead. This is like smart people who are, some of them are friends of mine, again, big media figures saying this stuff all the time. First of all, that number, or the numbers of combatants killed, is provided by whom? The IDF, the Israeli government. And you're taking those numbers for granted? Incredible. Also, as I said, we have zero evidence of the killing of any significant number of Hamas fighters. None. Still waiting for it. It's been a year. None. Zero evidence. they just say, oh, we've killed 10,000. Now we've killed 14,000. Oh, maybe we've killed 20,000 of them, they say, which makes their civilian to combatant ratio awesome looking when they just make up a number and people in the media repeat it as if it's true. When we know goddamn well that more than 90% of the people who are dead in Gaza are civilians. 2/3 are women and children. And then they'll say, oh, well, they have child fighters, right? Child soldiers in Gaza. You're like, okay, so that accounts for the 20. It's almost now, I think it's 16,000 dead kids in Gaza.
Dad.
So okay.
Some of them have Hitler as their background on their iPad. Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. That was a good one. So, yeah, I mean, Blinken and Sullivan and Austin and maybe even Kamala Harris on some level of her mind know what's going on. They know damn well that Israel is just killing a whole lot of civilians. And I guess the anniversary of it triggered it. Oh, also there's the election.
Well,
that's
yeah,
why.
it's the election.
That's why they wrote this. That's why they wrote the letter.
Yeah. Although it's 30 days, so any actual diplomacy will happen after the election if these standards aren't met. But this reminds me of the pier that was vowed to be built to provide aid to Gaza.
It washed away.
Yeah, they washed away, and yeah,
it's gone. It's now gone.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So, it seems like they're focusing on aid, which, as we've talked about before, actually makes the evacuation and the ethnic cleansing of Gaza more inevitable, or it buys them time to do more cleansing, essentially. Be more effective. Yeah.
Oh yeah, which is what it's all about. Yeah, again, they're not even slowing down the bombing and shelling of these refugee camps. I mean, it's just astonishing. Tent cities. They're dropping a bomb on a tent city. It's just, has that ever happened anywhere else in the world? I mean, I can't even think of it. The Nazis didn't do that. The British, the RAF didn't do that in World War II. They did horrific. They dropped bombs on cities. They didn't drop bombs on tent cities. Right? I've never heard of that. That is just, and they've done this pretty much every day for a year. Just incredible. Like, and then Lebanon, it's been 2,000 dead by Israel, and I'm actually concerned that they did kill so many Hezbollah leaders that Hezbollah is effectively crippled right now. Hezbollah did attack that military base in Haifa, though, and managed to kill, they say, the IDF says, 4 soldiers in Haifa. This is huge. Hezbollah hits a military base directly with a missile. Never happened before. Killing at least 4 of them and injuring 50 or 60. And they killed more than that because the IDF always undercounts they're dead. And so they're on a full-scale war in the north. I am concerned that Hezbollah is going to have a hard time resisting the IDF now because of these attacks on their leadership. But they still have that missile system. Yet the Hezbollah does. They still have a massive force, as far as we can tell, on the ground in Lebanon. But they're also bombing Syria. Israel has been bombing Syria because there's Hezbollah and Iranian people going in and out of Syria, and Hamas people going in and out of Syria. So they're bombing, again, civilian apartment buildings in Damascus, one of the biggest cities in the Middle East, right in the residential neighborhood. That's how they killed a bunch of Iranian military leaders, I think. Killed an apartment building in Damascus. It's just amazing. And then they're also bombing the militias in Iraq, who are part of the resistance. And of course, they have bombed Iran. They won't admit it, but they bombed Iran multiple times. Not just in this last year, but over many years. But they continue to bomb Iran, and they're bombing Yemen too, because the Houthis are attacking ships that are headed for the Haifa port in the Red Sea still successfully. And I believe the Suez Canal is still shut down. Is that right? I think there's still no shipping through the Suez Canal. Are they still sending the ships all the way around the Cape of Africa? Are they still, instead of going through the Suez Canal? They were doing that for months because of the Houthis. I don't know if they still are, but massive disruption to the world economy. I think it adds like 2 weeks to the travel time for those cargo ships to get to Europe now with the oil and other things. But so Israel's at war on 7 fronts now. Gaza, and the West Bank, they're actually also now dropping bombs on the West Bank now with the Air Force. I believe, no, they haven't used planes. They have dropped, they've used artillery or something, some heavy duty. They've bombed apartment buildings in the West Bank multiple times recently, killed many hundreds of people in the West Bank just in recent months. Hundreds of people in the West Bank have been killed by the IDF. Gaza, of course, at least 40,000 people they've killed, 2,000 plus in Lebanon. We don't know how many in Syria, probably several dozen, dozens in Iraq, dozens in Yemen, dozens in Iran, including, major Iranian leaders and Hamas leaders and Hezbollah leaders, the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah. I mean, so they have assassinated the top 2 leaders in Hezbollah, one of the top leaders in Hamas. They killed Soleimani not long ago with Trump. That's the Iranian general. So the Israeli assassination program, that's always been a staple of their foreign policy, is not joking. There's a whole book about it written by Ronan Bergman. I think it's called Rise and Kill. It's about how Israel, since the 1948, even before 1948, during the founding, one of their principal tactics was to assassinate the leadership of their enemies. And they've done that through the years. And then but recently, it's been an astounding success rate. They've killed a whole bunch of people, leaders of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranian government. It's quite something. So 7-front war, surrounded by enemies. Half of the American ruling class is now opposed to helping Israel. Half of the American population is now opposed to helping Israel. And the rest of the world is totally opposed to Israel. Bombs are now hitting inside Haifa, inside a major Israeli city, and Tel Aviv. Notice that Iran and Hezbollah haven't killed a single Israeli civilian. They've targeted only military installations. Weird how that happens. Seems like Israel can't do anything without killing a whole block full of civilians. I'm not saying Iran is superior. I'm not saying Hezbollah is superior, except in this case they are. In this case, they just are. And we might want to consider that when we decide on our foreign policy. So, I don't see how Israel lasts indefinitely like this. I just don't. They have to cease being a Jewish supremacist ethno-state. They have to grant freedom to the people in the West Bank and Gaza. They have to tear down the walls. They have to evict all of the settlers from the West Bank. They have to give full citizenship rights to every Palestinian living in the territory. They have to end the occupation. And then the resistance will stop. The resistance will stop. The Arabs and the Palestinians will have no reason to fight anymore. No one in our country will have any reason to oppose Israel whatsoever, its existence. I'm saying Israel. It can be the name Israel. And it can have as many Jews as they want. This is what has to happen, just like in South Africa in the 1980s. But this is far more consequential than South Africa. South African apartheid was the biggest issue in many ways in the 1980s. But it had none of the geopolitical consequences or implications that this does, right? So, it was, morally, ethically, of course, atrocious apartheid. So that's why we all opposed it so aggressively. But it didn't matter it didn't push us closer to war one way or the other. But this does. allowing this Jewish ethno-state to continue, protecting itself, maintaining itself, and expanding itself through the settlements, the closer we all get to world war. And we're just seeing that every day, inch by inch. We see all of us getting closer and closer to a world war because of this insane idea that Jews must have their ethno-state in the middle of Palestine, and serve as our unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Middle East, to be a tool of the empire. Because of that, even though we're now self-sufficient in energy, we don't need the oil from the Persian Gulf anymore. There's no strategic reason for the United States to be there. Yet we still insist that Israel is our eternal ally. I've actually in recent weeks, especially since the Lebanon war has really started, I've actually become really concerned about people living in Israel. And I know people who live in Israel. And I am really concerned that there will be, unless there is some radical reformation of that country, like in South Africa, it happened very fast. It went from an apartheid nation to a black ruled nation almost overnight. And no, there was no genocide of whites. Yes, there have been murders. Yes, I understand there's been quite a lot of violence against whites, but nothing like a genocide. Not what people are fearing in Palestine. And did the ANC and did black South Africans hate white people the way the Palestinians hate Israelis? Oh yeah, they did. But nonetheless, they democratized, ended apartheid, and we haven't seen a genocide. So, but in this case, in Palestine, if we continue this Jewish ethno-state, I don't see anything happening but massive war in Israel itself, and one that involves the United States, Iran, and Russia, and maybe even China. China's very interested in and active in Palestine these days, and they're very anti-Zionist. The CCP has sort of come out as aggressively anti-Zionist now. So that's it. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. It's sort of absurd that we have to talk about it because it's such a weird historical phenomenon, Israel and Zionism. It's such a peculiar little thing, but it's turned out to be the pivot of world civilization, meaning that it all sort of ironic given what it represents historically too. It is like it's the birth of Western civilization and the death of Western civilization might happen both in Jerusalem. Quite a thing some Jews have pulled off here. And I don't think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I maintain that both sides should drop their weapons and convert to Christianity. I think that's the only way out of this. Jeremy Loffredo got freed in some capacity. He's no longer in custody, not allowed to leave Israel until October 20th. But more details came out about that he was detained and sort of taunted by IDF soldiers. They were shouting at these journalists saying that you should have been raped on October 7th, that they mocked them for being irritated in the sun, that they beat them up and threatened them. And it looks like Jeremy Loffredo was reporting publicly available information, stuff that PBS was reporting on, that he didn't do really any breakthrough investigations of his own. He was just reporting on what was sort of public knowledge, where these bombs had landed. And they're using that to say that he was conspiring with the enemy. But now it looks like he's been released. And if they don't find anything on his devices in the next couple weeks, that he'll be home safe.
Yeah. We talked about this last week.
We did. Yeah. Right. But he hadn't been released yet. I just wanted to update the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. No. So, right. They held him in detention for 3 days, I believe, and then let him out, but kept his devices.
Yeah.
And he's also under house arrest, essentially. He can't leave the country.
Yeah.
He can't leave it. And it was for 9 days. I can't remember when the 9 days are up. It's soon.
Last week he was still detained, and it looked like he might be charged and sent to jail or worse.
So they dropped that. They dropped the charges.
Yeah.
But he's being held in Israel. So I'm actually concerned. I've actually thought about talking to the guys at Grayzone about this, because I'm sure they've thought of this, but I haven't heard anybody voice this concern, and I'm surprised, because I would be shocked if the Mossad or whoever is doing this won't be up to something like this. Think about it, right? So he's a Grayzone guy. The Grayzone is probably Israel's number one enemy in the media. I mean, honestly, I can't think of another media outlet that is more important as an anti-Zionist outlet. I can't think of any. They know the Grayzone and they hate the Grayzone. They must. The Grayzone has done tremendous damage to Israeli propaganda over the last year, more than, again, any other outlet. So they snatched one of the Grayzone reporters, took his phone immediately, detained him, and now says, while they keep his phone, that he can't leave the country for 9 days while they keep his phone. What would they be doing for 9 days with a Grayzone reporter's phone? What did they accuse the Grayzone of being before this happened? An Iranian proxy. And they charged him with aiding the enemy, meaning Iran. And a couple months ago, there was a Mossad CIA operation that tried to claim that Wyatt Reed, who's another editor at the Grayzone, worked for the Iran. I mean, he worked for Iranian TV like 10 years ago, press TV, as a freelancer. But they try to make it. They need to paint the Grayzone as an Iranian proxy. Don't we think, given Israel's lauded technical prowess with such matters, that they've got a bunch of little geeks in some little laboratory in Tel Aviv trying to stick shit in Jeremy Loffredo's phone to make it look like he's taking orders from the Ayatollah? Of course.
Yeah, back channels to the Grayzone. Yeah.
Something. I mean, I don't know exactly how they would do it, but there's something. I'm sure there's a bunch of like really smart little geeks, Israeli geeks right now, or who have been for a week, just sitting with Jeremy's phone, trying to make it look like he's connected to Iran. I think it's going to come, and I think it's going to be bad, maybe, because of course the entire pro-Israeli Zionist media class will run with it, because they hate the Grayzone even more than Israel does. They hate the Grayzone, and they're going to use this to discredit the Grayzone, or try to, once again. But I'm really worried about that.
Yeah, they better be auditing their own logs to find any trace of anything, so they can be ahead of it if anything comes out. Yeah.
I mean, I don't work for the Grayzone. I never have. I just know them pretty well. I've worked with them.
We put on their biggest live events ever.
That's true. I mean, this last one was by far their biggest live event. Yeah. We've helped launch Max Blumenthal's comedy career too, but
see, we're trying to help. We're trying to help you, Israel. We're trying to get him to quit journalism and do comedy.
Right. He's good at it. Yeah. I mean, so of course I can't swear that, that Iran has never given money to the Grayzone. I just really doubt it. And I've seen zero evidence to suggest that it's happened. So, until I see something, I don't believe it. But I do think that Israel's going to really try to pin it on them with Jeremy's phone.
Yeah.
Any day now. It's going to be a news story about that. Watch.
Yeah. They don't even need evidence. They'll just say that they found something.
Or right. Given how they do propaganda, right? Oh, we found 20,000 dead combatants.
Yeah.
Hamas. All right. Put the Patreon up.
Yeah.
The people have been demanding it. They've been beating down the doors to get this address. I've been hounded. People want to become patrons. Okay, well, you can become a patron now. We'll let you in. Go to patreon.com/unregistered. Support this show. And after Unreported right now, every week, we go to Unregistered Live, which is a live hangout after party on Zoom with everybody who's a patron. And it is the highlight of my week. We've been doing it for years. Super fun. So to become a patron, you get that and you help us keep going. So you should do that right now. Oh, by the way, it's only $5 a month. It's just the greatest deal there is. So do that right now. Help the brothers out. And yeah, man, thank you for your. That was ridiculous. That little anarchist on anarchist fight there. That was amazing. But thank you for bending my mind once again, you brilliant man. And I'll see you over there.
Cool. We're out.
All right. Peace.
Peace.